The boardroom fell silent when Dean Scott called me, just a pretty face with no real business sense. What he didn't know was that my grandmother had left me something more valuable than he could imagine. It was a rainy Tuesday morning in downtown Seattle when everything changed. I was sitting in the quarterly review meeting at Morrison & Associates, the tech consulting firm where I'd worked for 3 years. Dean Scott, our senior vice president, was presenting quarterly numbers when he announced the Henderson account was bleeding money. I raised my hand confidently. I've analyzed their spending patterns and identified 3 key areas where we can optimize their budget. I have a comprehensive plan that could save them 30%. Dean's laugh was sharp and condescending. Rebecca, sweetheart, leave the real business thinking to those of us who actually understand numbers. You're just a pretty face with no real business sense. Marcus, you take the Henderson account. The words hit me like a physical blow. Around the table, my colleagues shifted uncomfortably. Nobody spoke up. Nobody defended me. My cheeks burned with humiliation, but I kept my voice steady. With respect, Dean, I have an MBA from Northwestern, and I've increased client satisfaction by 40%. That's adorable, he smirked. But satisfaction surveys aren't the same as understanding real business strategy. After the meeting, I called my best friend Lauren Long, a corporate attorney. That evening, we met at our usual cafe in Capitol Hill. That's textbook gender discrimination, Lauren said firmly after I recounted the meeting. But there might be another way to handle this. Your grandmother's trust fund. Have you ever looked into exactly what assets she left you? The question caught me off guard. My grandmother, Helen Turner, had passed away 2 years ago. I knew she'd left me a substantial trust, but I'd never paid attention to the details. I know there's money, I said slowly, but I've never touched it. Rebecca, your grandmother was a brilliant businesswoman. You might have more power than you realize. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I opened my laptop and found the contact information for Stephanie Davis, the estate attorney who'd handled my grandmother's affairs. I sent her an email requesting a complete breakdown of my inheritance. By morning, I had a response. Rebecca, I'm glad you're finally asking about this. Your grandmother's portfolio is more extensive than you might expect. Can we meet this week? As I prepared for another day at Morrison & Associates, I felt something shift inside me. Dean Scott thought I was just a pretty face. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. Stephanie Davis's law office occupied the top floor of a glass building in downtown Seattle. She spread documents across her conference table, and I stared at the numbers in disbelief. She left me $12 million? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. That's the liquid assets, Stephanie replied. But there's more. She owned commercial properties, including a 20% stake in several tech companies. One of them is quite interesting. She pulled out a specific document. Morrison & Associates. My heart stopped. My company? Your grandmother purchased shares 3 years ago. She saw potential but had concerns about their leadership philosophy. Stephanie's eyes gleamed. She mentioned Dean Scott specifically in her notes. What does this mean exactly? It means you own 20% of Morrison & Associates. Any shareholder with 20% or more has the right to call emergency board meetings, review financial records, and vote on major personnel decisions. The implications hit me like a tsunami. I wasn't just an employee who could be dismissed. I was a major shareholder. There's something else, Stephanie continued. If you ever decided to use your voting power, the trust would release additional funds to support your decisions, enough to buy out other major shareholders if necessary. I called Lauren immediately. You own 20% of Morrison & Associates? Her voice rose an octave. Rebecca, you could demand a board seat. You could review their hiring practices. You could make Dean Scott's life very uncomfortable. Or I could buy them out entirely, I added, surprising myself with the boldness. That weekend, I researched Morrison & Associates' financial situation. They were struggling. They'd lost 2 major clients, and their cash flow was tight. Dean had been pushing for a merger that would eliminate many positions. By Monday morning, I had a plan. I walked straight to Dean's office. His secretary, Patricia Cook, looked surprised. He's not in yet, she said. I'll wait. Dean arrived 20 minutes later, looking irritated to find me there. Rebecca, if this is about the Henderson account, Marcus is handling it. Actually, Dean, I need to discuss some corporate governance issues. I pulled out a folder. As a 20% shareholder of Morrison & Associates, I think it's my area of expertise. The color drained from his face. What did you say? I said I own 20% of this company, which means I have voting rights and the authority to call emergency meetings. I slid the documents across his desk. Helen Turner, my grandmother. For the first time since I'd known him, Dean Scott was speechless. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for Friday, I continued. We're going to discuss the Henderson account, the proposed merger, and your management style. I stood up. Oh, and Dean, I'll be presenting my comprehensive analysis to the board. You know, the one you said I was too pretty to understand. Word spread through Morrison & Associates like wildfire. By Wednesday, everyone knew about the emergency board meeting. I spent the days preparing meticulously. My Henderson account analysis was bulletproof, and I'd compiled a dossier on Dean's management decisions. Lauren helped me prepare. Remember, you're not just an employee anymore. You're a major shareholder protecting your investment. Thursday morning, Marcus Thompson approached my desk, looking uncomfortable. Rebecca, about the Henderson account. I've been struggling. Your original analysis was really thorough. I was wondering if you might help me understand the market dynamics you identified. Marcus, tomorrow's board meeting will address the Henderson account specifically. I suggest you be prepared to discuss your progress. By Thursday afternoon, I'd received calls from 2 board members. Carl Clark, the company's founder, wanted to meet before the meeting. I met him at his private club in Bellevue. Rebecca, this situation has caught us all off guard, Carl began. Your grandmother never mentioned having a granddaughter in the business. She believed in merit-based advancement and treating employees with respect, I replied. Carl nodded slowly. Dean has been pushing for this merger, but I've had reservations. The acquiring company wants our client base, not our people. What if, instead of selling, we could restructure internally? I pulled out my tablet. I've identified 5 key areas where we're underperforming due to internal inefficiencies, not market conditions. Carl studied my projections. These numbers are impressive, but implementing changes would require significant management restructuring. I've been preparing for it my whole career, I said. I just didn't know it until now. Friday morning, the boardroom was reserved for the entire morning. The board members filed in: Carl Clark, Wayne Hall, the CFO, Janet Rivera representing the pension fund, and Andrew Ramos, our largest outside investor. Dean arrived last, looking exhausted. Carl called the meeting to order. We're here at the request of Rebecca Thomas, who has established her position as a 20% shareholder. I stood up, my heart pounding but my voice steady. I've called this meeting to address 3 critical issues: the Henderson account situation, the proposed merger, and systemic management problems hurting our company's performance and culture. I presented my Henderson account analysis, showing how my strategy could save the client $300,000 annually. I demonstrated Marcus's confused attempts and the resulting potential loss of the account. Then I addressed the merger. The proposed acquisition would eliminate 40% of our workforce, but I've identified a path forward that preserves our culture while improving profitability by 25% within 2 years. Finally, I addressed the elephant in the room. Dean Scott told me I was just a pretty face with no real business sense. I've documented 3 other incidents where Dean dismissed female employees. Our retention rate for talented women has declined under his leadership. I concluded, do we want to sell our company to an entity that will gut our culture, or restructure internally to become the company we have the potential to be? Wayne Hall spoke first. Rebecca, these projections are impressive, but who would implement these changes? I looked directly at Dean. I propose we need new leadership in the senior vice president position. Someone who understands both numbers and people. Are you suggesting you want Dean's job? Andrew Ramos asked. I'm suggesting the company needs leadership that recognizes talent regardless of gender and can implement necessary changes to thrive. After a recess, Carl returned with the board's decision. The board has reached a unanimous decision, Carl announced. We're rejecting the proposed merger and implementing Rebecca's restructuring plan. Furthermore, we're creating a new position, Chief Strategy Officer. Rebecca, we'd like to offer you this role, with a seat on the board of directors. Dean's resignation was effective immediately. What about the Henderson account? Wayne asked. I'll be taking it over personally, I replied. Marcus will continue as project manager, but we'll implement the original strategy. Lauren called as I was packing up. How did it go? I'm the new chief strategy officer. Rebecca, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. I keep thinking about my grandmother. She set this whole thing in motion. She gave you the tools, but you did the work. You stood up for yourself and everyone else who's been dismissed or underestimated. Over the following weeks, the transformation at Morrison & Associates was remarkable. I implemented merit-based advancement and collaborative decision-making. The Henderson account not only stayed, but expanded their contract based on the savings we'd identified. Marcus Thompson turned out to be an excellent project manager when not navigating office politics. He thanked me privately for giving him a chance to prove himself on merit. Patricia Cook, Dean's former secretary, was promoted to executive assistant for strategic planning. She'd been quietly documenting problematic management decisions, and her insights proved invaluable. The most satisfying moment came 6 months later, when we announced record quarterly profits. The local business journal ran a feature story titled, "How Morrison & Associates Avoided a Merger by Promoting from Within." I kept the article on my desk, next to a photo of my grandmother and me at my college graduation. Helen Turner had always told me that being underestimated was sometimes an advantage, because people weren't prepared for your actual capabilities. 1 year after that humiliating board meeting, I was presenting our annual strategy to the same conference room. The space looked different now. We'd added windows, updated furniture, and created a more collaborative environment. Our retention rate is up 30%, I announced to the board. Client satisfaction has reached an all-time high, and we've exceeded revenue projections for 3 consecutive quarters. After the meeting, Carl approached me. Rebecca, I have to ask, when you walked into that first board meeting, did you know it would lead to this? I thought about his question. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let Dean's dismissal of my capabilities stand unchallenged. But I never imagined it would lead to this level of transformation. Your grandmother would be proud. I think she would be. She always said that being underestimated was a choice. You could either prove people right or prove them wrong. That evening, I met Lauren at our usual cafe. She was reading the Business Journal article about Morrison & Associates. Listen to this quote, she said, grinning. Chief Strategy Officer Rebecca Thomas represents a new generation of leadership that combines analytical rigor with emotional intelligence. I laughed. It's funny how different that sounds from just a pretty face with no real business sense. Speaking of which, did you hear about Dean? I raised an eyebrow. What about him? He's been struggling to find a new position. Apparently, word got around about why he left Morrison & Associates. Companies are being more careful about hiring executives with discrimination issues. I felt a pang of sympathy, but not regret. I hope he learns from this experience. The important thing is that you turned a moment of humiliation into an opportunity for growth, not just for yourself, but for everyone at your company. As I walked home through downtown Seattle, I reflected on how much had changed. The trust fund my grandmother left me had been important, but it was just a tool. The real power had come from refusing to accept how others defined me, from doing the work to prove my capabilities, and from using my position to create opportunities for others. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Henderson account wants to expand into 3 new markets. Can we meet Monday to discuss strategy? I smiled, typing back, absolutely. Let's build something great. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement as I walked home, thinking about my grandmother's legacy and the future we were building at Morrison & Associates. Sometimes the most powerful response to being underestimated is simply to prove, beyond any doubt, exactly what you're capable of achieving. Being called just a pretty face had stung, but it had also revealed the true character of the people around me. More importantly, it had forced me to discover my own strength and use it not just for personal advancement, but to create a better environment for everyone. That's a lesson my grandmother would have appreciated. Real power isn't about proving others wrong. It's about building something better than what existed before.